What is going on, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about something I haven't for a very long time, despite the fact that people have been requesting it for about 5 months now. Actually longer. People have been requesting it pretty much since the beginning of this channel, and I used to do this type of video, but I found this kind of difficult to do, and I had a lot of trouble coming up with ideas for this series. But what I'm going to be doing today, if you haven't figured out already based on the title, is another versus battle. It's been about 5 months since I did the last, but it's definitely about time, and somebody did present a pretty obvious but good idea for who I could do it for. The person who suggested this battle is Sleep Deprived from my Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, it is an app you can download to join a server that I run, and the link to it is in the description. It's pretty much just a place that people that like my channel talk about One Piece and a few other different animes, mainly One Piece, talk all about it. Versus battle, suggestions you can leave there. You can have discussions about battles between different people, different One Piece theories, all this great different stuff related to One Piece. I'd like to see a lot more of you in there. We got a little bit over 500 members right now. It's a great time. A lot of people talking in the voice chat almost every single night. I'd like to see you guys there. Make sure if you want to join, check the link in the description for the Discord. So this versus battle is going to be between Sanji and Jinbe, and while I know there is still a lot that we have not seen from either of them, I think we have a lot more to expect from both Sanji and Jinbe. We did get a decent look at the two of them in Whole Cake Island, and I think I have a decent idea at the very least of where they stand right now. Also keep in mind, for this versus battle, I'm pretty much going to be assuming that Jinbe has access to some decent amount of water, maybe like a kind of big pond, I suppose, similar to the battle that he had with Ace. I know he had pretty much an unlimited amount of water to use against Ace, but I'm thinking like a large pond, you know, something that could be used in like jutsus from Naruto, pretty much like large scale water attacks like that. Not something deep or large enough for him really to effectively swim in, because that would give him a whole different level of ability, but just something for him to use water attacks, right? The things that we've seen him do like in the War of the Best and in Whole Cake Island. So let's start with what we saw from Sanji in Whole Cake Island, starting from the beginning, I suppose. It really all started, for the most part, I mean, we did get to see, you know, him versus Judge, but that wasn't a real battle, and he didn't really fight any of his brothers seriously either. And I really do think he is probably stronger than any of the Vinsmoke, so it doesn't really matter anyway. And not to mention, we don't know how strong they are in comparison to other people for the most part. So I think it really all started when he dodged Katakuri's Jelly Bean. I think that that was an extremely important part that a lot of people seem to overlook, and they just think, oh, well, I mean, why would he be able to do that? I mean, you have to consider the fact, though, that even Katakuri was pretty surprised when it happened. I've talked about this a few times in different videos, and I know King of Lightning has his own theory on this, but pretty much I believe that there are not really different versions of observation haki, but different ways of using it, I suppose, that you can kind of train separately. I think the three big things we've seen so far are pretty much your ability to feel somebody's presence, like to feel the location of some object or some person without actually seeing them. You can kind of anticipate attacks like a Sharingan from Naruto, or the new Future Sight we've seen, which I kind of think might just be a super trained version of the anticipating people's attacks. But Katakuri has been shown to not really be able to just anticipate attacks, but just future events in general. So I could very well see it being a third ability of observation haki. So with that being said, I think that we have seen Sanji have extremely powerful observation haki in at least the first two categories I suggested. We saw him able to detect multiple sharks and Kinemon's body while he was underwater in Punk Hazard in Nami's body. I don't know if that really makes any difference. I doubt it. I don't think it would really make much sense for it to make a difference, but I mean, I guess it could, so that is important to mention. We also got to see him while he was inside of Capone's body, which is kind of a pocket dimension. I don't think it really exists outside of the One Piece world, but it is kind of its own thing. He was able to feel that Big Cat was coming towards him. He said an extremely powerful person is coming this way, so you guys should be fine. So he has a very strong presence observation haki, as I would like to call it. And I think his anticipation observation haki, as I once again would like to call it, is probably also very powerful based on the Katakuri Jelly Bean attack. I think him being able to dodge it quite cleanly, it didn't seem like it was really that close, is a huge indication that his anticipation haki is extremely powerful. While I don't think he has unlocked Future Sight in any capacity at this point, I think that he could be one of the strongest observation haki users overall that we have seen up until this point in the story. I think that he could even very well be rivaling Katakuri's ability. I mean, you have to consider, and I really did think this was very strange, Katakuri was very surprised when he found out about Flampe attacking Luffy. I thought it was very strange that neither Luffy nor Katakuri expected this to happen. I mean, Luffy was completely taken off guard, obviously, since he was affected by it, and Katakuri didn't even realize it happened until he figured it out because she pretty much told him so. You would think that both of them would have at least felt her presence. They would have known that she was in the room, and Luffy would have been on guard, and Katakuri would have more of anticipated something going wrong if Luffy was to just trip up like he did. And yes, I know that they were both very tired. Luffy was pretty much, I mean, his eyes weren't even open, so that's kind of important, I suppose. I could see why maybe he would have overlooked this due to being so exhausted. But Katakuri is, for one thing, supposed to be like the god of observation haki at this point, and he really was not tired at this point. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, he hadn't even wounded himself at this point, so he was nowhere near exhaustion, and he should have definitely been able to pick up on Flampe being there if he had a very strong presence observation haki. So I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of shit for saying this, but I think Sanji might have stronger presence haki than both Luffy and Katakuri. Luffy, I guess, you know, he was exhausted, so we don't really know how strong his is, but I don't think there's really any reason to just assume that it's off the charts or anything. I don't know why it would be any stronger than Katakuri's anyway, and I think Sanji's has been shown to be very prevalent throughout the series. All the time Oda seems to be emphasizing. And then I would say his regular anticipation haki is probably pretty close to Katakuri and Luffy. I think those two are very close to each other. I think he's probably a little bit below them, but it's definitely comparable, to say the least. I don't have too much to say about his armament haki since we have not really seen too much of him using it or really any good examples to scale where his power could be at right now. I'm thinking it might not be that good. It could really only be good enough to actually be able to nullify a Logia's intangibility and not much stronger than that. But who knows really, it's probably right around there. I don't have too much to say about it though. The two other big things worth mentioning in Whole Cake Island, I think, were that he was able to pretty easily shatter the candy glass around the Vin smokes. I don't know how hard that would really be. I mean, you know, that none of them were able to do it themselves, and they're supposed to be like superhuman, so I guess that's pretty good. But they were also probably in a much more difficult situation since they didn't have momentum on their side. I mean, Sanji came at them breaking it while he was able to move while they were incapacitated the entire time. So, I mean, I think it's pretty good, but it's probably not the greatest thing ever. I think that the real biggest thing we saw out of this arc from him was when he was able to attack Oven so fast from a long distance that nobody even knew what happened. I mean, I think we can assume that Oven most likely has observation haki, and he was not able to even detect Sanji in the slightest. He had no idea what happened, he had no idea who attacked him, and then everyone just kind of went on like nothing happened because what were they really going to do? I think this indicates that Sanji may very well have the highest combat speed in the Straw Hat crew. I really don't think it's very debatable. I guess Luffy in Gear 4 probably would very much compare to it, but I think Sanji probably does have the edge a little bit, which is extremely impressive. I mean, just based on what we were able to see from Gear 4, I don't know about Snake Man. Snake Man might be faster than Sanji, but at the very least, I think Bounce Man and Tank Man are definitely going to be slightly slower than Sanji when he is at his full speed. And I mean, you have, again, that really is extremely fast because even Dofi kind of got blindsided by Luffy because he was moving so quickly. And keep in mind, I know I talked about this one time and a lot of people are like, oh, well, Oda said that in a 100-meter race, Brook is going to be the fastest. Yeah, I understand that, but you have to understand yourself that Oda specifically gave a 100-meter race as the example, indicating that we're not talking about combat speed here. We're talking about a 100-meter race. I think in actual combat, his combat speed, which is an entirely different thing than his regular speed, is probably the highest on the crew, except for Luffy and Snake Man. So that's pretty much all I have to say about Sanji right now. So let's take a look at what we have seen and what we can assume from Jinbe so far. So Jinbe's power is really hard to gauge, I think mainly because of how early he was introduced in the story. I think if he would have been introduced after the War of the Best, it would have been making a lot more sense that he could be more powerful than Sanji. I think it would be much more clear that way. But because he was introduced so early, Oda kind of had to tone him down, or he would have been much more of a factor in the War of the Best. He would have actually been able to compete against admirals. I'm not saying he'd be able to really do any significant damage to them in any way, shape, or form, but I'm saying that he would actually be able to hold them back for a decent amount of time. They would pretty much be able to low diff him, but that's not no diff him. There would be some kind of fight going on there. However, despite him not being portrayed that well in the beginning of the series, I think Oda has done a pretty good job in Whole Cake Island of displaying how powerful he really could be. While I don't think he could go toe-to-toe with him or anything like that, I thought it was pretty impressive how he was able to take a large cup of tea and just really completely bend this thing to his will and get Luffy out of Katakuri's mochi by liquefying it. I thought that was pretty amazing, especially considering the fact that Luffy was not able to get out of it himself. Of course, again, that's because of the weakness to his mochi is just applying liquid to it in general, really. Mainly water would probably be the thing you would use. But, I mean, still, Luffy was completely incapacitated, and Jinbe just comes in there and is like, oh, boop, and it was all over. Luffy never made that mistake again. I think we can definitely assume that he has at least a decent level of observation haki. Technically, it's never been confirmed, but I mean, I've explained this a million times, I feel like now. It doesn't really, it can't be confirmed as easily as armament haki. I mean, you confirm that someone has armament haki as soon as they deal any damage to a Logia user. Where observation haki, there's no real way to actually confirm, I suppose, that they have it unless Oda really wants to make a point of it. Like, it has to be in the dialogue. They have to be like, oh man, I can't believe I was able to react to that fast enough, or something like that. Like, they have to come out and completely say it, which kind of just like breaks the atmosphere, right? It's like, oh, okay, so Oda is dispensing information on us now, and he doesn't want to do that. I think he wants to allow most people to just make the assumption that much stronger people in the One Piece verse just have the ability to use it. I mean, seriously, some of the people that have it, it's like, how could Jinbe not? Rebecca has observation haki. Helmeppo has observation haki. How are you going to tell me that Jinbe does not? It just doesn't make any sense. And as for his armament haki, I think that it is going to be extremely powerful. I think his observation might be just decent, and his armament is going to be crazy, probably rivaling both Luffy and Zoro's. We don't really know anything about Zoro's at this point, but I think we can make a lot of assumptions considering he's specializing in it. I mean, we were able to see him use armament haki to launch Big Mom off the ship with pretty much just one punch. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. That is seriously powerful. Like, Big Mom is not just a Yonko who is of a tremendous size, but she is supposed to have some kind of, like, impenetrable armor when she is in her normal mode, I guess, which I don't really think she was here, but still, I mean, she is extremely durable, and for him to just launch her off the ship, that is absolutely nuts. I'm sure he is very physically powerful as well, but I think that has to be a pretty good indication of him having extremely powerful armament haki. Now, as for the actual battle, what do I think would happen between Jinbe and Sanji? Well, I think it would be a very long and drawn out battle. I don't think it would be very quick. I think it would be an extreme difficulty for whoever the winner is here. I think what we'd be seeing here, quite hilariously actually, is something extremely similar to the battle from Naruto between Rock Lee and Gaara in the Chunin exams. I think that Jinbe would kind of be like having an absolute defense using his water and extremely powerful armament haki, and Sanji would just be moving extremely fast around him, constantly going in for attacks, getting blocked most of the time, not doing too much damage, but landing a lot of weak attacks on Jinbe. I think Jinbe would be able to take a lot of these attacks without taking much damage at all. He wouldn't be expending much energy or effort, while Sanji would slowly be getting exhausted. I mean, you have to consider his big thing is he's able to use fire to some extent, and Jinbe Jinbe is pretty much going to be immune to that. I mean, the guy is pretty much a water bender at this point, and I've given him a decent amount of water in this battle. It might be very difficult for Jinbe to make any massive offensive maneuvers for the majority of this fight, but as he is able to slowly gain the advantage in terms of how much energy he has left, and he is able to use his probably much larger amount of combat experience since he is much older and he has been fighting for pretty much his entire life. Sanji really is new on the scene. He really has just recently learned hockey in general. I think that Jinbe is definitely going to be walking away with the W in this battle. I really think in this battle it is going to be a case of an ultimate shield versus a near ultimate spear. I think that Jinbe is going to be just way too durable for Sanji to handle, and after enough time Sanji is going to be exhausted and have to pretty much concede to Jinbe. Now, keep in mind, I am in no way, shape, or form saying that I think by end of series Sanji is still going to lose to Jinbe. I think that possibly, very likely by the end of Wano, Sanji is actually going to retake his position in the Monster Trio. I think by the end of Wano it will be Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and then Jinbe. I still bet they'll be extremely close. I think Jinbe could get even stronger in Wano as well if he maybe has to fight a Calamity or something like that, but I think that Sanji definitely has the advantage when it comes to his potential. Especially because he's so much younger. I mean, come on, right? Like, Jinbei is pretty old at this point. He really should be hitting his cap soon, or at least be slowing down in how fast he improves, where Sanji really, by all means, is in his prime. I mean, he's got years till he starts really going on the downtrend, so I think that he most certainly is going to overtake Jinbei later in the series. So that is all I really have to say about this versus battle. Hopefully a lot of you guys agree, maybe you didn't, but I maybe gave you some kind of information that you enjoyed. Maybe I changed your mind or something like that. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Remember to leave me a comment letting me know what you thought about this video, if you enjoyed it, if you thought I just sounded like an idiot the entire time, if I have no idea what I'm talking about, if Sanji would mid to low diff Jinbei, if there really is no contest for the guy, fire for some reason defeat water. I don't really understand how that would work, but you know, I mean, that's how it worked in Avatar: The Last Airbender. The firebenders were the most powerful even against water, so who knows? While comments are always an option for doing this, remember, if you haven't already, to check the description for the link to my Discord. You can come in there. I have a channel completely for debating versus battles, pretty much. You can come in there and tell me why I'm a complete idiot, why Sanji definitely is going to beat Jinbei. I'd love to talk to you guys. With that all being said, I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day, an excellent start of your weekend, and I will talk to you on Saturday.